Hi there. News just broke that The Last of Us video game creator Neil Druckmann is leaving the HBO TV series adaptation, that Druckmann won't return for season 3. I was already working on a viewership statistics report about how The Last of Us TV series performed, going by the numbers, objectively. The viewership numbers for The Last of Us Season 2 were so bad that HBO desperately tried to obscure the results. Obscure the results by quoting off the worldwide viewership number in comparison to the USA only Season 1 number. That they were desperate enough they did that when people would instantly know that's not comparable and that's just silly. And I'll talk about just how unprecedented that was. Well, globally, it did this. Meaning what? And the mere fact that they felt compelled to lie shows how desperate they are and just how bad it was, signals how bad it was. But that's not the real question here. It's why was it bad? Why was the viewership bad? At what points were people turned off by it? Not relying on random speculation and personal bias, but the hard evidence of the viewership data. What trends does it indicate about audience retention? That what are the specific points of season 2 that in reaction viewership dropped? Did people abandon the show in droves because a major character died at the beginning of the season? Or did they abandon it because it went woke? Or was it something else? What does it correlate to? Well, the first thing that really grabbed our attention is, like I said, HBO tried to obscure how badly Season 2 did by intermixing the results of the global and USA viewership. That they never give out global viewership numbers for anything. This is the first time I've ever seen a global viewership number for Last of Us, for House of the Dragon, for Succession. They never give the global numbers. Because they're still expanding, I don't exactly blame them for that in general, that they haven't given it for other shows, but I'd like to know, like, how well is House of the Dragon doing if you factor in Brazil and stuff, because it's huge there. In their press release, the way they actually worded it was that the Season 1 average viewership for the season as a whole, post 90 days, in the USA, was 32 million. But that it, quote, increased to 37 million global views in season 2. You can't compare those two numbers like that from two different sets. You either have to give two different values for USA Season 1 versus USA Season 2, or global Season 1 and 2. This is the Season 1 USA number. How did Season 2 do? Well, globally, it did this. You're so clearly... It's why are you even lying? It's not lying convincingly. When everyone instantly pounced on this as it was that bad that you're quoting the global number. So the mere fact they're doing it shows how bad it did, that they consider it embarrassingly low. It's not that I consider it bad, they've admitted it was bad by their standards. What's more upsetting to me, though, is that news sites who glossed over that distinction and didn't even, pick up on that. In fairness, HBO did say in their press release, USA 32 million Season 1, and Season 2 37 million global. Then, not little news sites like Deadline then directly quoted off, well, it says 32 million Season 1, 37 million Season 2. Without including those qualifiers, USA or global. They're different numbers, idiot. Well, for post 90 days USA only, House of the Dragon, by comparison, Season 1 House of the Dragon was 29 million. Then, and that was earlier than I like to say, because I'm biased. Well, Season 1 House of the Dragon came out before The Last of Us Season 1. Maybe more people bought HBO Max, subscribed to it because of House of the Dragon, and were then in place to watch The Last of Us Season 1. But you see that steady increase because they're still growing and expanding. House of the Dragon Season 1, 29 million. Last of Us Season 1, 32 million, USA. House of the Dragon Season two's 90-day average did dip a bit from 29 million to 25 million, which is a drop of about 14%. And as I'll go over in other data, that's actually pretty good retention for a 2-year gap versus there are some other shows that lost viewership by half. So the question is, how do we try to find out a rough guess at what the USA viewership number was for Last of Us Season 2? Can we figure that out on our own if HBO won't release it? Now, I didn't want to make an hour-long video here, so I'm going to summarize a lot of this. That there are wild estimates that were just people quoting, I think it went down by half, to as low as 16 million compared to 32 million Season 1. But running the math myself, I think it could have been as high as 24 million, which is still down from Season 1, which was 32 million, but I don't think it was 16 million. Because when we're looking at these overall numbers, and this is just post 90 days, do we have the specific episode-to-episode viewership to try to measure that and try to pinpoint at what point did people stop watching? Because those are the post 1 week numbers, not the post 90-day average. Well, House of the Dragon, for example, they did publicly release some, that they don't publicly release it all the time, but House of the Dragon Season 1, for example, started at post 1 week was 9.99 million. Just 9999 was a little frustrating, but the second week it went up to 10.1. Season 1 finale was 9.3. So anything over 9 million is pretty good for a show this scale. House of the Dragon Season 2 premiere, the premiere, before people had time to react to changes or anything they had done at all, because you're just watching it, premiere viewership was 7.8 million. That's a 16% drop, clearly just due to 2-year gaps between shows are killing them. And that matches up pretty well with that overall plus 90 days average that viewership dipped by about 14%. So 14 to 16% drop is what we're consistently seeing across different metrics, post 1 week, post 1 month for House of the Dragon, and it seems pretty consistent. Though Season 2 actually increased in viewership week to week as it progressed, that started at 7.8. We only have viewership for 2 other episodes, that the Big Battle episode, 2.4, was 8.1 million. And then by the finale, it was up to 8.9 million. So it was increasing. It's more important to, at least we're accelerating, at least going in the right direction. Viewership was increasing again. It's just this is clearly due to the 2-year gap. The way I tried to calculate all of this is working backward from, because it's a hybrid at HBO Max, that they have 1/3 of their viewership is still from the HBO cable channel, the other 2/3 from streaming, and they don't give us the streaming numbers, but you can see the relative drop from the cable. Nielsen does give out the figures, so then I just multiply by 3 to get, well, this is probably what it was near, roughly. They did give out figures for, these are the ones they did give out, though. Last of Us, USA viewership only, it's always USA unless stated otherwise, post 1 week, they stated that Season 1 premiere was 4.3 million, which doubled to 8.2 million for the Season 1 finale. Didn't give us weekly numbers or average, so I can't really compare that, but skipping ahead, the Season 2 finale viewership was only 3.7 million. So you're seeing headlines, multiple news sites pointing out this is a 55% drop in viewership from the Season 1 finale to the Season 2 finale. Running the math, it was, as HBO did rightly point out, the finale aired over a holiday weekend, Memorial Day holiday in the United States, which has always objectively resulted in a drop in viewership, so the real drop was probably closer to 50%, but 50, 55, it was still pretty bad. I think if you account for the holiday weekend, it would have been probably in the range of 4.2 million. I wish they gave us the weekly numbers. If we had the week before Memorial Day, I think it would be around 4.2 in that region. So those are the numbers we're dealing with. Some are blaming this on the source material. The controversial decision by game creator Neil Druckmann to kill main character Joel at the start of the second game, which the TV show faithfully adapted without major change. and which was similarly shocking to the much larger number of TV-only fans who never played the games. On the other hand, arguing against that, are fans of the second game, even though the controversy, they loved the second game, have complained about changes to character story arcs later in Season 2, after the point where Joel dies in the second episode, which was faithfully adapted. Up to that point, it matched the game very closely. But then in episodes 3 to 7, because it was only a 7-episode season, it seems like, well, the guess is they wanted things to arc out across the series as a whole. So, like, have Ellie only gradually slide into revenge across seasons 2 and 3. I don't really think that makes sense. I see why they're doing it, but with gaps of this scale between seasons, you should have had one big season to do it, of 14 episodes rather than this. But putting that to the side, it seems they were dragging some things out. Which is it? We have these two camps. We have the people who hate Druckmann for killing Joel at the start of the second game. And then we have people who love Druckmann and say the TV show with Craig Mazin, the showrunner, they were bad for changing all of these character arcs that didn't make sense later in Season 2. So looking at the viewership data, which I worked out backwards from the Nielsen cable viewership, then tried to make a proportion of, I'm not going to get into the math, I don't want this to be an hour long, which one of these does it correlate with? Well, the answer is neither. It makes more sense to go in reverse order back to the premiere. You'll understand when I'm done. First off, there was no significant drop in viewership numbers across episodes 3 to 7. They remained relatively stable. 3 to 7 is the point when the character arcs were diverging from the source material. So, with hard evidence, we can say there was no point where over half of the audience suddenly rage quit in reaction to TV Ellie saying she was considering giving up on her revenge quest and leaving Seattle, and then Dina having to talk her back into it. That's a change. That did not result in a 50% viewership drop between episodes, nor was it a gradual steady drop of like 5% per episode. 3 to 7 are all roughly the same viewership number, in the low 4 millions, 4.2, 4.3 in that region. The viewership numbers just don't match up with that interpretation at all, that it was people reacting. Most people watching this didn't play the game, even though it was a popular game. How would they know, walking in blind, that this isn't what the game did? Their only measure is, does it make sense in universe? And it's hard to unread a book, so I don't know that I knew going in what happened in the game. But at the very least, they weren't going to rage quit within a single episode over it. What about Joel's death? Is this where the 50% drop happened? He died in episode 2, and between episodes 2 and 3, there was a drop, which by my measure was about 20%. And then after that, it stayed level for the rest of the season. There's 3 points you need to know. Second one is there's a 20% drop after Joel died. Then the third and final part is it stayed level through all those changes. What was the first of these 3 points you need to remember? That's where it really happened. The issue is the Season 2 premiere itself. We do have viewership data for that they did publicly confirm. That they said the Season 2 premiere post 1 week. Well, remember Season 1 premiere was 4.3 million, and then by the Season 1 finale was 8.2 million. Season 2 premiere was only 5.3 million. Just from the start, before people even had time to react to it. That you only see a backlash in viewership numbers after something happens in the subsequent episode. People who stop watching the week after. Last of Us went down from Season 1 finale 8.2 million to Season 2 premiere 5.3 million. Doing the math, that's a drop of 35%. Which you can say is purely due to the 2-year gap between seasons. Is a 1/3 drop in viewership. That where did that 50 plus drop in viewership come from? The biggest drop was purely due to the 2-year gap. There was admittedly a 20% drop when Joel died, because people who were fans of Pedro Pascal, even though the way it's structured, he then appears in these really great flashback scenes. You know, like the second to last episode was, he's going to get an Emmy for that, and rightly so. That I directly compare this with what happened to House of the Dragon Season 2, that the premiere episode alone, where the actual content could not have affected the number of people tuning in to view it, for House of the Dragon, it was down 16%. And then it actually built up after that, but for Last of Us, it was even worse. 35%, a full third drop. This is blatantly due to the 2-year gap. So these two armed camps of people who hate Druckmann or people who hate Mazin, that either the game is bad or the adapter is bad, it's actually just that trend in the industry towards 2-year gaps. I admit, I'm trying to be the voice of reason here. I admit, for those who saying, oh, I'm washing away the story changes, like Supercuts Delight really didn't like the story changes, I admit that might lead to future backlash. Because it's gradual, as opposed to, oh my god, Joel died. It's just the gradual buildup of little changes accumulating into bigger changes. Didn't make people rage quit the show, like right after episode 5, not come back for episode 6. I admit that having seen all the episodes, people who watched all of season 2 through episode 7 might not come back for season 3. Specifically because they're upset at this is where the character arc is going, but it was gradual enough they couldn't see it, on an episode-to-episode basis. So I'm not trying to shut anyone down. I'm saying it is possible that if you see a massive drop in season 3, it'll be from people who don't like that they made those changes in season 2 about the revenge arc, and they don't think it's arcing out well. But at least from episodes 3 to 7, it was stable. That I really think the bigger issue here is the breaks between seasons are ruining shows. And HBO has already learned this lesson. They said we're going to start batch renewing things multiple years in a row so they can come out annually. That they made a point to say Dunkin' Egg will come out annually. We need to sync it up. That's why it was delayed a little. And because it's easier to produce, that they want the Pit medical show. We want that annually. There have been whole articles since this is the year that all the studios learned the Netflix model of waiting for the streaming data doesn't work. That you need to batch renew things, otherwise you lose audience momentum. This was really the first TV season after the writer's strike. If you consider it goes fall, spring, that if House of the Dragon was the very beginning of the first post-strike shows, that's the start of last summer through the end of spring is all one big season. They're all in the same Emmy cycle against each other, which means House of the Dragon has no chance against Pedro Pascal at this. And they're even putting great odds on Bella Ramsey getting a Best Actress nomination, but not Emma Darcy. They both did a good job, but I don't like to see them competing against each other. But point is, we are blaming each other when we should be united against the common enemy, the Romans. That the problem was these studio mistakes of scheduling, and we have hope for the future because even the studios, like HBO at least, has admitted we're not going to have 2-year gaps anymore. That's not something they have a choice with for Last of Us Season 3, unfortunately. Even if they ordered it right now, they can only go into production now. But if there is the 4th season that Mazin said he wanted, they better damn well film that back-to-back with their 3rd season, or all will be lost. Most of it already is. And I just don't know. That's my biggest question in this. The Season 1 finale, the Season 2 premiere, was a 1/3 drop in viewership. Nothing controversial happened in it. There was this epic Battle of Jackson where they're good, well-choreographed zombie fight where they're throwing flaming barrels at them, they're fighting in the streets. I cited it as an example of the right way to do zombie action. Everyone loved it. No one criticized it. And yet the viewership fell by 1/3 based on the strength of that one episode. It's just, this is the 2-year gaps. And as long as we're just idle speculation on the internet without looking at the hard evidence of these or what the viewership cycles are like, this is what behind the scenes production, how it affects things. Not Kathleen Kennedy wants to destroy my soul, but there are business reasons things happen. and why that affects us negatively.